Hello. Hello there.
Hey everybody being not anybody yet, but
I think it's
you know,
just Slivered and MDub.
okay.
Loyal followings. Uh, we've decided to because we didn't stream on Labor Day. We decided to do a quick stream today, going through some of the tournament refreshes. We'll probably be back Monday at our regularly scheduled time, which is whenever we get a chance to go and do this and do PTCS. Because hey, that's this weekend. Good luck to everyone who's in it. I hope everyone wins an Allen Trammell. I guess that wouldn't make sense, but you know, maybe it'll happen.
I'll be happy if I pick up a few choice packs, especially a choice pack of I guess high diamond would mean I made the semifinals, right?
Yes, High
Yeah.
Diamond is semifinals, if I recall
So I'd
correctly.
be happy with a high diamond choice pack. I'll set that as my goal for the weekend. I think I have 7 lottery tickets this time around. I went from 5 to 6 to 7. So hopefully, the more random shots at this I take, one of these I'll bust through.
Perfect draft is the easy way to get in, since that's how my ult got in. So, uh, but that's more random than anything. So yeah, let's hop right into it. Aster, take us through the weekly tournament changes.
Okay, so only 4 changes to the weekly tournament schedule. Just wanted to go through them real quick. We're not going to go in much depth. Tuesday snapshots is now the Tuesday snapshots cap. Uh, Based on the pool for snapshots, which has been pretty stale, it doesn't really change much. I was able to get most of the kind of same players that I was playing in under the cap, just a little bit less bench depth and a weaker bullpen. So really, kind of didn't do a whole lot. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on that one unless until we get some new snapshots cards. Um, the exciting ones are we got the low diamond, which was the uh, first low diamond of this new run of them. Was won by MW. Congratulations! It's nice to have that tournament back. Always a fun format. And then for the first time in PT 22 or 23, we get a open diamond tournament, and it replaces live diamond, which was a pretty redundant format given that we have live open. So I think those two are just nice kind of basic formats. They're pretty straightforward, so we're not really going to do much to discuss them. Um, and then the last change is that the Saturday overnight under the covers cap that we discussed last week on the stream. I actually won the last one, and then now it's being replaced. The name is staying the Saturday overnight under the covers cap, but it is no longer a cap. Um, it is rookie sensation silver, um, and it's still 1962 settings, um, but it is an aggressively awful format. It's very the player pool is very thin. I think there's 2 bronze catchers plus Bill Salkeld, uh, and most of the other positions have a couple of silvers where you're either picking a guy that can play defense and has no bat whatsoever, or a guy with a bat who has no defense whatsoever. So I do think people for the first couple of weeks are going to play some kind of wide variety of different lineups, but within 2 or 3 weeks, I think everybody will basically be playing the same team, whatever seems to work out the best. So it's already full, but if you signed up for it this week, throw a team together, try whatever you think is going to work best. I don't have much of a sense of what's going to play. 1962 settings, so you'll need 5 starters, and they're going to throw plenty of pitches, so you can get away with a starter that has, um, weaker stamina than you would in a normal tournament, and you probably need maybe 5 bullpen arms, and um, then you can work a little bit with some different options on having an extra bat in the lineup. Um, I found it hard even to find reasonable players on both sides of a position to set up platoons. So just kind of throw something at the wall, hope it sticks for this week, and then maybe we'll start looking at some of the data. Once we have a couple under our belt. Um, that's pretty much it for weekly tournaments. Daily tournaments, the daily silver floor cap is now the daily high silver floor cap. We're going to discuss that in detail. And then the daily gold floor diamond ceiling cap is replaced by the daily special edition cap, which we're also going to discuss. The other two changes are just a couple of modifier changes I wanted to point out because a lot of people, I think, miss these and make some mistakes with their lineup. First of all, the daily gold run robin overnight changed the modifier from 1975 to modern settings. This is only important in the sense that if you play gold quicks and then jumped into the round robin overnight, it would sometimes switch your roster, and then you'd have to switch the roster back if you wanted to adjust for the 1975 settings. Now you don't have to worry about that. And then the daily historical snacking hour, not part of the PTCS tournaments, or is the gold round robin, but it's now the modifiers from 1991 to 1933. So you only need 3 starters and and not much bullpen. But with a format like that, you can definitely play around with some different strategies because you still have to play 7 pitchers, and you may want to play like 7 or 8, and do some fun things where you have your starter only pitch 4 innings or something like that to try and adjust the matchups, and guys will be able to throw forever whether they're starting or in the bullpen, so you can do some fun things there. But that's all we're going to talk about those. We're going to go right into the daily high silver floor cap, which I guess we're shortening it by calling it the DHSFC.
Yeah.
It's a 2021 cap. So just to do our cap number calculations, we come out with a 6.84 cap. So this is a pretty tight cap. It's modern settings with a DH. So we're going to need a full lineup, and we're not going to be able to get in that many, high level, perfect, or high diamond cards. So just in terms of putting your team together, this is the kind of cap where I'm looking to do more of a spread the wealth strategy than stars and scrubs. I don't want to really do 6 perfects and then maybe and then sprinkle that 0.84 over a few other guys and then just playing all 75 cards. I think that the pool of 75 cards is pretty good, but I think that you can really get more value bumping those 75s up into the some of the really strong golds if you have the tournament edition cards and things like that. So we're going to go on the next slide, and Exto is going to talk to us a little bit about what we can expect for the run environment for this tournament.
Yeah, so Aster has been running this for the past few days, so this is just kind of a rough outline between a weekly open run environment and what we kind of see in the DHSFC cap. Out of it, strikeouts, walks are a little lower, which is a little surprising, I guess, in the high silver floor cap. But you almost have a full run less, so I guess offense just. I'd almost wonder if it's the pitching is people invest a lot into pitching, which is kind of suppressing the offense. So
that would be my guess. Is it just that the pool of players that people are, still going with. First of all, like most cap formats, I think a lot of people are running Bullet Joe Rogan, so they've got a pretty high tier starting pitcher that along with their DH, and so and then I think a good amount of the people that have been playing it are running one or two more perfect starters, and then like dropping down to their fourth starter being like a solid gold, like the 87 Kevin Brown, and then Carl Hubble or Johan Santana or Pedro Ramos as their like silver fifth starter. So the overall level of the pitching is pretty high, and then the just the level of the batters, especially compared to an open environment. Definitely you've got weaker bats, and it's interesting that of home runs are down almost 50%, and walks are down pretty significantly. Um,
It,
you
it
know that,
it's almost I think most of the profiles are going to be like mid high kind of profiles. Like I guess the
right,
Derringers is basically what's being run in the high silver floor cap where I
right.
because I guess also because it's a 32 man versus 128 in the open. There's much more diversity in the open run environment, so you get the higher strikeouts because it's against the weaker teams, and where I think with the tighter cap, you
Well,
kind
this
of
is 64 teams, not 32. I think it's run in
oh
32 just because it got cut at least once, like the first week, the first day that it was up. But I think most of them have been 64, and
right,
that's the default.
yeah, okay, that makes sense. So from this data, I applied my magic uh, predictions, and if you've been on listening to our streams for a while, sometimes my predictions are good, sometimes they're not. But what I basically broke this down is by tier. So one thing that kind of Astor mentioned in one of the previous episodes we've talked about is how for caps showing the top is nice and all, and like I've tried to kind of capture this as like here are your like top end guys and here are your lower end guys for your bullpen, but instead here are just based on what Astro is saying, how you don't necessarily want to go all in on hundreds. So it'd be kind of good to get an idea of high performers. So anything kind of pop out to you, Aster?
Uh, I wasn't surprised that there was such a gap between the perfect cards and then the best diamonds, but it's just interesting to see. You're talking about like I guess a third of a run between just dropping down from like 100 to 99.98, and so I think it's just important. I see people sometimes, and maybe they just that's who they have, but playing Pryor or Sid Fernandez as like their second or third starter, and I think saving that point or two over uh, the perfect starters. Obviously, if you don't have them, you don't have them. But most of the people that are playing the dailies on a somewhat regular basis, I feel like at least have a few of those 100 starters that are listed there, and so um, you know don't look to save a point or two. One of the things that they don't quite show up on this list, but there's a lot of like 93, 94 starting pitchers that probably, maybe can come close to, the top diamond cards. And that might be where you're starting to, do a little bit better. Although if you look, the high gold guys, Kevin Brown, Austin and Nepper, uh, you know, a lot of those players, you're now saving a pretty solid amount of points. And, while they're clearly not as good, the drop off really isn't that terrible. And then, especially when you look to the silver cards and realize that, like, somebody, Hubble, if you have him, is, no cap points. Somebody like Zachary's only two, um, and Ashby's only four. Though they obviously are weaker pitchers, but they're not going to get destroyed. And they can keep you in games, and hopefully there's still a decent amount of offense in this format that you just want to have guys that can kind of keep you in games.
Uh,
And so I think if you're thinking about a build for this, Bullet Joe Rogan makes a lot of sense to be able to play both ways. And then after that, I think you might want to maybe have one more perfect starter, and then maybe not have any diamonds. Maybe go right to third and fourth starter be golds, and then fifth starter be a silver, or you can even get away probably with two of the silvers. Um, and also just if you're not seeing a guy that you think is like your guy for high gold or high silver or whatever, um, this is based on limited amount of data that we have about what plays. So and you can see like the bottom of that silver list is just 1/100th of a point of FIP. Um, and so somebody who's like 4.70 could turn out to be actually the same or much better even. And so obviously play the guys that you feel comfortable with. It'll be a while before we have reliable data on these, and we'll probably revisit this and look at it when we have good data. But generally speaking, I think my approach is to try and spread the wealth a little bit, and kind of have a variety of pitchers. And looking at this, I feel a little more comfortable. Maybe doing two of the gold guys, and and then maybe silver as my fifth starter, and that saving a lot of points over kind of going with a lot of top pitchers in this format.
I think what this tells me, or what's interesting to me is how big of a drop off from the top end guys. So like you go from a Pedro Martinez or a Hubble down, like the fact that the predicted FIP is whatever 22 points between the first and the 10th for
Right.
perfect, but and then even for diamond like Randy Johnson versus Jim O'Toole. But then when you get to gold and silver, like there's not a lot of like it's an eighth of a 8/100th of a FIP between like the first and 10th. So it does
Right.
get really tight. It's like if you want more balls in play and you want a higher defense, then take someone who has more control and more home run suppression. If you want to play more offensive but get risky with men on base, then get someone with higher stuff and maybe lower movement. So I think the one thing that as I've been like working with this model is that like it picking the top FIP, it's really important to understand how that FIP is composed, I guess, between like strikeouts, walks, and home run suppression. But I think that's one thing that they've like OTPD has done well this year is that like we complain that all the cards suck type of thing, but it's definitely has allowed a lot of kind of different builds at times. Just because, yeah, you can play a more defensive build, heavy build, or you can play a more offensive heavy build.
Sure.
Talking about offense, here is hitters by position. So, um, I guess interestingly, Harry Davis. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
I almost messaged you about that earlier when I was looking through the slides, because I can't understand how that's possible, that he would rate out above Gehrig and McCovey. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just that's like I feel like that's kind of inexplicable. that he would rate that highly, but
I think it's
I don't know.
the gap power. But yeah, you're right.
Really? Okay. I didn't know. I knew gap power could help, but I didn't think it would. You know, I mean, Harry Davis is a great card, and but I would have expected it. That Jim Bottomley, at similar. I think it's an 89. Um, comes out at 434. I wouldn't have been terribly surprised if Harry Davis was right around that, maybe even slightly above Bottomley. Also, Ed Konichi um, and I'm sure I'm butchering that name, at 79. Also being that high up above guys like Dick Allen and Jimmy Fox and things like that is pretty surprising. Um,
Let's chalk it up to small sample size.
okay,
Tank the Lou
uh,
market, yeah.
yeah.
After Kidneys pulled his Lou, I'm sticking it to him.
Or
Yeah,
we find out that Exto actually has 27 Harry Davis cards and is planning on dumping them after the stream.
yeah. It really likes Gap. Uh, it likes Gap about as much as it likes Avoid K's. Um, I I don't know what to tell you, but that kind of explains a lot. Like it explains why you have Bresnahan, why Biggio is up there. Yeah, it's interesting because it like this is one thing that I've always talked about is that I like the way I model stuff because it tells me to play cards that may be bad, but um, at least I'm not playing the same cards every time. Um, at least it likes Hugh Duffy, so that's good.
Yeah.
I forgot to rip out Hugh Duffy and Alan Trammell, so no, this isn't an error. This isn't an error tournament, right? This is modern.
No, this is modern settings.
Yeah, yeah. So for whatever reason, in the almost 20,000 innings pitched, it really likes Gap. Um, maybe I'll double check that because
Yeah.
maybe it's taking it's think
Because
it's
most of the
taking.
other, I mean, certainly with that would make sense. Gap with why a guy like Delahanty would show up as the number one, left fielder. Um, seems a little off, but not crazy, given if Gap plays up. But the fact that Davis and Ekenichi are that high, uh, just seems a little bit suspect.
Okay, so let's look at this by tier now, and this will at least we'll look at cards in the same overall. So this is a little different, or not so much different, in that each of these going clockwise from the top left to the top right, bottom right, and then bottom left. I'm removing a card tier, so I go from perfects and below in the top left, diamonds and below in the top right. I actually do this clockwise. Golds and below in the bottom right, and silvers in the bottom left. I think in a later slide I might have switched this up. So here you kind of like see, relatively speaking, like you're talking about, as we go down, as we move away from like a stars and scrubs to a more balanced approach. Like you could maybe run, I don't know, some like the bottom right lineup with Harry Davis and George Kell. Oh, maybe something's wrong. Let's just go with this is Gap is the high floor or high silver floor cap. Um, okay,
Yeah,
let's.
I think I would take from this just general, like when you, this is kind of a good lesson is, if you see data like this and it just looks a little off, is like clearly, Gap plays up in this format for whatever reason, but probably something is slightly off that it's showing is playing up this much. Because if you look, most of the rest of this list looks pretty straightforward and would be kind of the off the top of your head list. But I think some of the outliers Like George Kell is definitely a guy that is playable to the extent that he has pretty high gap power. And if this is kind of overselling gap power, that's why he shows up so highly on the list. But I think I'd avoid constructing my roster based on that. I think I would, you know, or it's just to kind of see like, that when you're talking about hitters, you can still get a lot of production out of some of these hitters at at the lower levels. That even if Harry Davis isn't really a 429 expected WOBA, if he's 410, that's still pretty good. And that's a guy that would definitely play. Um, and certainly, most of the rest of the guys on this list, I think, would be interesting options to consider. Um, the guy that I'm kind of surprised that isn't showing up on the silver list, because anytime we look at you know actual data for any tournaments where he's remotely playable, and even some that he's not, is the 75 Bob Bailey, which always seems to just stand out, even if he's up against gold and sometimes even low diamond players, still somehow looks like one of the best third base options. So I'm surprised he doesn't show up on this data, but maybe his profile doesn't right. But I wouldn't be surprised if once we have enough data to look at actual results, if he turns out to be pretty high in the list.
I think that slide is broken. I'm looking at the sheet now, and hold on, this is
Okay.
bugging me. So we're doing it live, folks. We're doing it live. We're gonna get rid of that, and we're gonna put this here. There we go. All fixed. Let me just. There we go. Ta-da! Lou Gehrig.
Okay.
Lou Gehrig, folks. We did it live. Um, yeah, because even
Oh, so wait, yeah. So I was saying the number right, 429, and that obviously wasn't high. So it just gave him a higher number for some reason on that slide, but not in
Mic
the other one.
off.
yeah,
Mic on.
Okay.
yeah. That was the
I'm
thing that
I'm glad we spent 5 minutes talking about that.
it still likes Gap, but yeah. So
Sure. Okay. But
so
that at least somewhat makes sense.
so let's look at the data from the actual tournament.
Okay.
So this is the top 10 performers from the top 25 plate appearances and innings pitched. So innings pitched is WOBA against and or for pitchers, and for uh, batters it's just a straight up WOBA. So yeah, this is not as interesting. But you do see, Rocky Colavito, Ken Griffey Jr., Joe Mauer. Silver Joe Mauer apparently is pretty decent. Um, and then pitchers,
Interesting.
you kind of you see the most pitchers. Royce Hubble, McCormick doing well is a little interesting. Derringer not doing as well as some of the other ones, but then you see it's only 255 innings versus 393, but like you could pay 22 points less for Johan Santana.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ones where um, we're going to need a lot more data. But it's interesting just to see based on that. It looks like vast majority of people are playing Bullet Joe still. That Vita Blue and Jerry Royce are getting a ton of play. I'm surprised that Kevin Brown's getting so little, but that's probably because his innings are getting split up between the 100 and the 87. I wouldn't be surprised if the 87 Kevin Brown gets almost as many innings as the perfect one.
So that's the daily high silver floor cap. cap. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay. So the next one's the daily special edition cap. This is an 1800 cap, which when we calculate the cap number comes out to 12.67. So this is a much looser cap. Um, it's modern settings and it's with DH. And again, like the high silver, it's best of seven tournament. Important thing to notice, though, and why this is not quite as loose of a cap as the 12.67 would suggest, is that at the lower end, the special edition card pool is really just the plat one and plat two, irons and bronzes. There's not any tournament edition lower tier cards below silver, and so you don't really have that many choices. And you have some really good options at a couple positions. Mike Benjamin, Jeff Blum, Joe Black, guys like that. But if you want to have a full bullpen of iron pitchers, there's there's not really any 40s. Joe Black's at 43. There's a good 44 Noah Lowry, but you're going to end up even if you're going with the absolute cheapest bullpen that you want, this is modern settings, you're going with 7 bullpen arms, you're still spending, 25 or so points just to fill out a bullpen, even with, the worst options that there are in the format. Whereas, in a lot of caps, if you're really trying to skimp on the bullpen, you're playing a lot of, 40 to 42 guys and not really spending anything. And then, same thing with your bench. Obviously, if you happen to have him, the LE Aaron Sibia allows you to, have a 40 overall and not spend any cap points on your backup catcher. But if you don't have him, I think, the next best option is several points higher. And then infield, you can get away with Blum and Benjamin as your primary backups. But then outfield, you have to spend a good, I think the lowest one's like a 45 or 46. So, you're really losing a lot of cap points in, filling out your bench. So I think this is a format where if you're building a roster, follow our recommendation and build a cap shell first. And that way you kind of see which ones what you have to kind of fit in to have a solid bench and bullpen, and then start to fill in your roster. Because otherwise, what I did the first time is I just started putting in the top guys, and then realized at the end, like, oh my goodness, I have to get rid of some of these guys or downgrade to fill in to make the room for because I was kind of doing it with my normal kind of cap build in mind, and those guys just aren't eligible for this format.
I do like in this format, like I feel like this is like the tournament players format, because I feel like you get to play, you're forced into playing some of those tournament edition cards that you never knew you had, type of thing. I remember the first few times I built it, I was like, oh yeah, let's just play this guy. This sounds interesting.
Yeah, no, there definitely are some interesting kind of when you get to kind of backups and even some of, like, if you're trying to punt a position or do like a semi punt of a position to like a silver card, suddenly like a 71 Ben Zobrist that you might have but you never really think to play, kind of looks like a really good fit as a guy that's reasonable defense, reasonable bat, and a lot less points than if you're spending more at that position. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. I found kind of filling in the gaps with some interesting players with this format.
So, how this compares? Because I think this is about 4 or 5 days worth of data. The thing that kind of pops out to me is that this is actually a format where there's more left-handed starting pitching than right, barely. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's probably Royce, Hubble, uh, those types of guys, which is kind of evens it out. But otherwise, you kind of sort of see the bit of the run suppression. Um, yeah, more switch hitters, I guess, because you're kind of compelled to play them.
Sure. Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's interesting though, because with a looser cap and um, I'm surprised that the pitchers do this much better in in this run environment than uh, than in the Sunday Open one. I guess just having a lineup of nine of the top uh, perfect batters just overwhelms even the best of pitchers. Whereas some of those same best pitchers are still pitching in daily SC cap, but they're just facing a lot weaker of a lineup because you're downgrading at a lot of spots in order to fit under the cap. Also important to notice is this is a cap where Bullet Joe Rogan does not play because he's listed as under Negro League and not a special edition, even though he was a mission reward. So there really aren't any viable two-way options. So you're kind of, you're if you're going to be starting a 100 pitcher, you're starting one of the at least the very best you have, and quite possibly one of the very best there is.
so on to predictions. Let's see, how did I do this? Okay, now I did this in like a zigzag pattern. But
Okay.
again, this is perfects, diamonds, golds, starting from top left, center, right, and then silvers, bronzes, and iron pitchers. Um, so yeah, it looks like there's a big drop off going from I guess the top diamond pitchers to the top gold, and then similarly quite a big drop off from silver to bronze.
Yeah, that silver to bronze drop off is pretty high, and I've kind of always found and one of the things is that the silver, most of the playable silver cards starters are tend to be the higher silvers. There's a few, Harshman is often good, um, but and so you'd think, oh, if I can drop down from like a high silver to like a mid to low bronze, that I'm saving a ton of points. But I just think the production, other than Kevin Brown certainly is pretty good, and the fact that he's a 61 and grades out as one of the best bronzes, makes him an attractive option, as a fifth starter. But you know, he's definitely going to get, when you compare him to the top options, it is a pretty significant downgrade. Um, and then when you look at even some of the best iron options really just getting tagged around. Um, and obviously, I think you have to use some of them, but you see, you really, the more innings that they're pitching, the more trouble they're putting you in. So you hope they're mostly getting low relief innings.
I think the next time I build this, I might invest more just in the bullpen, just because of the big drop off. Like you can
Sure.
you can kind of get away with like a Kevin Brown and a Benson, but like I don't know how many innings I want a Joe Black to pitch.
Right.
But I guess if I'm already putting in Benson at 61 for a 5.7, I almost want to drop. Like I feel like in the bottom two, the bottom like between bronze and iron, like you only want like maybe three max.
Black, because he's one of the only like true low irons that is even remotely playable, I think you kind of have to put him in there. But definitely when you start looking at, I think like the, you know, just like the fifth lowest pitcher for this format was like a 49. So that would be one where, rather than rostering him, just that player just because he's the cheapest, is spend some more points and move up to Kevin Brown. Then you're only talking about like 10 or 12 points. That might be a better trade off, is to get somebody that's just not going to get destroyed.
Destroyed by hitters. So this is hitters by position, and I don't think we have any anomalies in this one. Everyone kind of sort of fits. Although
Harry Davis isn't the number one shortstop in this one.
no, Harry, no, we do
Okay.
we do have Alan Trammell at the top and Hugh Duffy at the top. So of those respective fields. So
Okay.
um,
Um, it's jarring at first to see Lou Gehrig not show up at the top of a list, but he's not eligible for this format. So Willie McCovey, takes supremacy here. Um, yeah, I mean, looking at these lists, you see, the vast majority of the top spots are, perfect cards, but there are definitely spots where, there are lower tier guys that, stand out. Prince Fielder at first base, Jack Clark at first or right field, um, Toby Harrah at third, where, Vern Stevens at shortstop. You see that there are guys that, put perfect level production up and are top 5, top 10 at some of these positions, but save you 9 to 13 cap points. That's pretty significant. If you can do that at several positions, you can really help yourself in a cap format like this. That it was not super tight, but still you can't just play whoever you want. Um, and you obviously want to play, a lot of these very top guys to get, the production from, King Kelly or McCovey or Hank Aaron. But, uh, uh, but I think that, you can see a lot of the good, LEs and term edition cards that are low, low diamond or high gold, really still hang with the very top options, and can really provide a lot of value. And then doesn't show up on here because there's not top 10, but there's a lot of silver guys, like John Kruk and Paul O'Neill and and some of those other bats that when we look at the silver tier cards, Sid Gordon's a good example. Um, those guys, still, they're not clearly at the level of production. You're taking a drop off, but you're still getting, some pretty solid hitters. And now you're talking about saving, 25, or so points. It's not a full punt, but it's a semi punt. And when we talk about drop offs, looking at this by tier, you see after silver, um, the drop off to to bronze and iron bats really drops pretty much, not quite off a cliff, but there's only like a couple guys at those tiers that even have remotely playable bats, and most of those guys are like Frank Lieber, who's the top iron bat, just has no defense in center field, and just isn't really like a good fit here, for kind of a punt situation. I guess you could punt, DH and play somebody like Lieber at DH, but most likely you're probably going to want to try and get us, one of your stronger, um, uh, silver bats or something like that in there instead.
I looked it up, and Benjamin is predicted to have a 228 WOBA.
Okay, that's yeah.
So yeah, that's that's pretty low.
Yeah.
And I recall, like, I don't know even if I did it, but I recall a lot of people kind of playing him as their primary shortstop. too as well. Which
Yeah, definitely in the in some of the tighter caps, I've seen that as a popular punt of the position. Certainly in the when we had the 1625 cap, uh, that was a move a lot of people were making to save a ton of points. Um, and you are giving away a huge amount of offense in that situation, but he really is, almost a diamond tier level shortstop defensively. At no at one cap point is pretty ridiculous. So if you really want to go with a full punt, that might be catcher is often a pretty good one. Um, although you know it's harder in this format to punt catcher because Harry Danning at a 48, I think is about as low as you can go, other than if you happen to have the 40 Aaron Sebia, and so you may have to spend a little bit more at catcher than you would in a lot of other formats. But Benjamin definitely stands out as one of the best punt options because the defense does play up to a much higher level.
yeah, and I think when we go back and look at the cap number, like I think like you said, that cap number is deceiving just because you can't fill out your roster with 40s, and
Right.
so yeah, so let's look a little bit at the data. So this is again the top 10 of the top 25, the top 10 in WOBA for the top 25 in plate appearances and innings pitched. So yeah, Jack Clark. I wish I had one. Um, and then Derringer. I wish I had one. But yeah, I don't know. Again, usage wise, you kind of see a lot of Vida. You see the 100 Kevin Brown. You see Royce. You see McCovey. You see Aaron. You see Morgan. So, and it going back, like one thing I want to kind of talk about is kind of where was it? Yeah, it's like the defense numbers, like Brooks at 127, I guess Larkin at 101, Walker at 100. I'm almost wondering if you'd almost want. I don't know if the defense you want to trade off that offense for the defense, but yeah, these numbers are pretty good. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that with that, generally speaking, if you're spending 100 points on a card in a cap format, you really want them to play, above average to elite defense as well as being, an elite bat. Obviously, first base with McCovey, you're just looking for that elite bat. Jack Clark is just such a good offense that you're and he is going to play first base for you or DH. Um, that you have room for that at least that one spot if you have him to to run that kind of a bat. But it's why Brooks certainly is phenomenal option because he's one of the top bats, but also he's a pretty elite defender. I'm not sure that third base defense in tournaments is particularly important, but you know somebody like you know uh, yeah, I mean, there's not really anybody that stands out. I mean, I guess Griffey being a pretty high level bat at center field, where most of the other players in his tier are are good, better defenders, but terrible bats. He's at least kind of a good trade off that you're getting one of the top 10 bats, and and you're getting probably above average defense out of Griffey.
yep. Uh, so the last little thing to talk about is the perfect draft changes.
So they got rid of all the live perfect drafts, which I pretty much ignored anyway. So that was nice to see. But we got a lot more daily and weekly perfect drafts, which is really nice because I feel like now, anytime you happen to notice that you have a perfect draft slot open, often have 3 or 4 options of dailies and a huge number of options of weeklies that you can kind of look to see if there's a card you particularly want or a card that you think is going to be particularly valuable if you happen to win it, like a Jack Clark or Vernon Stevens or something like that. So I really applaud OTP for listening to the community and adding some spots because it was getting really hard. Kind of had to pay attention to when the new ones were generating and jump in pretty quickly. Now it's a lot more. Now it takes a few hours for them, and if they don't have the best rewards, then it's taking a good amount of time, and that can be nice if you're trying to get into as many as possible to qualify for the PTCS. One thing to note is a lot of these new daily and weekly PDs have year modifiers prior to 1960, and this means that for a lot of them you need 2 maybe 3 starters, or if it's like 60s or 70s, you need 5 starters, but you don't need as much bullpen, and you want to kind of adjust your strategy to address this. It's possible we kind of do this, with a future stream. Maybe do some of these ones where we do go through some perfect drafts in like the more extreme. Like I think there's one with like 1919 settings. I know there's one with like 1927, 1933 settings, and it's just kind of interesting because when you're drafting for those tournaments, I my primary adjustment is to kind of take some starting pitchers early, and then after I've gotten a couple really solid guys, then I really just you can start spending a little bit more time building a really strong offense where you're doing a little bit more with platoons and thinking a little bit more about handedness, that you just have more options because you don't need to get nearly as many high-end starting pitchers. Once you get if it's like 1933, you get your 3 good starting pitchers, and then you're done with that. You can basically then fill out in the bronze and iron with a few guys, almost like like it's a cap tournament that how you would build. So if people want, that's definitely something we can kind of go into more detail. Just keep that in mind. Make sure you look at the year modifier before you start drafting. Sadly, it's not something that you can see as you're drafting. You have to look before you start it. But take the couple seconds, kind of think about what that means before you actually click the button to start drafting. And I think it can really help. I think it'll be a big advantage for the people who pay attention to that until people start getting used to the fact that a lot of these formats 5 starters, you're hurting your overall team significantly if you're still drafting 5 starters fairly early when you only need 2 or 3.
Uh,
Any thoughts about perfect draft, Sexto?
no, I love the changes. I like the live PDs. I thought they were kind of neat, but they were ridiculously hard. Yeah, the engine does weird things when you do weird things. So when you run 12 people Bailey OOTP, yeah. I think we've all like I remember I did the bronze cap like a month ago, and I got into the quarterfinals or the semifinals with a 5-man rotation when it was like 1933. So even I'm guilty of it. Yeah. With that being said, I'd like to wrap up. Good luck to everyone this weekend in PTCS. Everyone win a trammel, if possible. Yeah, anything you want to add for
No, I
farewell?
think yeah, definitely. Good luck to everybody. We'll be back on Monday to kind of break down what happened in tomorrow's BTCS, and we'll bring back the top 10 leaderboards with a couple more weeks of data updated, and maybe even I may do some more data work on Sunday and see if I can come up with a couple new categories to show everybody. So thanks for hanging out and listening on a Friday night, and we'll catch you guys on Monday. Good luck, everybody.
Gonna set up a raid to who's streaming. Uh, let's go. Let's go to Justin to main. OTP developments raid. All right. Bye, everyone.